today we're going to connect with Landis, and some of you may or may not have seen this session before. And it's okay if you have, because Landis always has something different to tell us about the animals. And they're animals. You never know what they're going to do. So we're going to be talking about food chains. And what I have done since we saw Landis the last time and did this session the last time is we have put a really cool activity on our website where you can print off some of the animals that Landis is talking about and create your own food chains with the cards. You know what I'm talking about, right, Landis?
Yes, I do.
So we've done that for an at-home activity that's on the website. So we know that Landis has a full session for you, and sometimes I have to look like this, and sometimes I'm so excited to see. But today we're going to learn about food change. So over to you, Landis.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and I'm excited to do this. We can change up how we talk about food chains every time we do it because there's really an infinite number of food chains that you can create. For those that haven't seen me yet or before, my name is Landis and I'm at the Leslie Science and Nature Center. That is located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I'm currently standing inside one of the houses at the Nature Center. And while most of my job actually revolves around taking care of the animals that are housed here, I every so often get the opportunity to show you guys some of those animals up close. And Molly's right, we have a full house today. We have a ginormous food chain that we're going to try to build with 5 different animals. So we're going to do our best. We may have to quickly run through some of these guys to make sure you guys see the whole food chain. But when we talk about food chains, it's also important to know just what those are to begin with. A lot of times we might talk about food chains or maybe food webs. Well, today, chains themselves are really focusing on specific kinds of living things, very specific plants and animals that we usually find in the same habitat, and really how they're all connected by who eats who or who eats what. So today, when we are building our food chain, the connections we're making are going to look like this. They're going to actually start from the bottom, and we're going to work our way towards the top. Now, sure, there's other ways that you can connect all of these empty boxes. If you make them in a cycle, you bring in more arrows, more boxes, that's a food web. So today, to make sure that we focus on the specific idea of a food chain, we'll just be following this line. However, every food chain actually starts with something that isn't even alive. It's the driving force, though, for all living things that we have here. We need it, animals need it. There are many things that need this for heat, light, and energy, and that's this guy. I can't actually bring the sun into my room, so I have your picture instead, but the sun. The sun is the driving force for many living things that rely on sunlight for heat, light, and energy. And when we think about our food chain, that's actually what we're going to have down at the bottom, since it's kind of making everything else connected. So I'll start by putting the sun as my label down in our bottom box. We'll make sure we reference this chart the whole time we're talking about food chains. Now, if you're thinking that something is connected to the sun, what we're talking about next, or going up in our ladder here, is we have to think of something that uses the sun to make food. The next thing we have as we go up our ladder is something we call producers, which are plants, trees, bushes, flowers, all things plant related. Most of those are considered producers. Now, there's a great way to remember that word producer. If we go to a grocery store and we're looking for things like apples or bananas or oranges, we are going to the produce section of the grocery store. Why? Well, you're buying things from producers. And what happens is through this process, we call it photosynthesis, but they're basically taking their leaves and they're sitting there getting sunlight and more, and then they make sugars in their body. The plants are suddenly full. Be awesome if we could do that using the sunlight. So these producers, or usually plants, are what follows next in our food chain. So we have our sun and then our producer, thinking of that produce section of the grocery store to help us figure out what those producers are. But then from there, because we're going to spend more time on these remaining boxes, we have to go up our ladder and think of things that cannot make their own food. Instead, what they are called are consumers. You're all a consumer. I'm a consumer. Many animals are labeled as consumers. And that's because even though, yes, we can make food in a microwave, We still have to go get ingredients. We have to go buy food. We have to scavenge or hunt or use different tools to go find food we need to make us full, and we consume it all. And so today, all of the animals that you are going to meet, we're all putting them in the consumer category. Now, the 3 boxes that I have left, they actually can all be consumers. Today, we're meeting 5 consumers, so we in our food chain are going to have a lot more of these. We'll leave these 2 blank though. We'll talk about those near the end. Now, if you're thinking of your first consumer, going up your ladder from your plants, you would typically think of an animal that eats plants, or maybe only eats plants. We usually call them herbivores. And if we were building a longer food chain, we'd probably need to start small. So the first consumer that I have, while he looks big compared to other animals like him, is actually one of the smaller animals we have in our food chain. And he's a delicious snack to many other things that we'll see too. But here, let's take a closer look at the first consumer I have, figure out why it's where it is in the food chain, and why other animals find this guy to be a delicious part of their meal. Ready? Here we go. This is our first consumer, or you can say primary consumer. Now I know what you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's huge. And it is a very large insect, at least compared to other insects that we see here. Some of you, if you've seen some of our other workshops or other ones with other organizations, you might recognize this creature. I saw Molly was asking you guys. I won't give away its full name yet, but what I can at least tell you is that it's an insect. We can identify that because of these long antennae or strands coming out of its face. All insects have 2 antennae. Oh, I see somebody in our chat room saying it's a cockroach. That is an excellent guess. I see someone saying, yep, you are so right, but not just any cockroach. This, my friends, is a Madagascar hissing cockroach. They're great teachers. In fact, we can learn just about these guys for a whole hour if we had the time. But why would a cockroach be a great first consumer? Well, insects, they're chock full of protein, meaning they have a lot of good nutrients in their body, including other fiber and more, that a lot of animals rely on in order to survive. Usually, they don't get their protein from chicken or fish or turkey or tofu. They rely on having a variety of insects to get that specific nutrient from. However, too, these guys, they produce, well, a lot of them. One cockroach like this can have up to 50 eggs at once. So there's a lot of cockroaches to go around to have a lot in your food chain, too. The other thing, though, for Madagascar hissing cockroaches specifically, they are what we call detritivores. It's not usually a word we use that often. What that means, though, is they eat dead stuff. Sure, they eat producers, but they eat dead producers, dead plants mostly. But that's great, because even inside that dead organic matter are a lot of other nutrients that animals rely on in order to survive. So these guys, not only because of what animal they are, but also because of what they eat, they become great food for a lot of other predators. Now, a lot of you probably know then, if you've heard of a hissing cockroach, their main way to protect themselves. Every animal you meet, especially the ones on the lower end of the food chain, also have to have some way to protect themselves just so they can survive. So hissing cockroaches, since they don't have any wings, they rely on these holes in their abdomen. You may be able to see it. There are these dark black dots along the side there. Well, those are holes inside this animal's bones, their exoskeleton. And what happens is they'll move muscles inside their abs, push air through those holes, and make that loud shh noise. But the fun thing is they're usually hiding when that happens. And so if there's a predator nearby, they don't know it's a cockroach right away. They think it's some ginormous, scary creature nearby when in fact it's just a cockroach not even as big as my hand. So it's a unique trick to be able to convince other animals they're a lot scarier than they think. But insects in general are a great first consumer. Not only because we find a lot of variety, but because when we move up our ladder, there are a lot of animals that are primarily, insect eaters, or what we call insectivores. Now, with our second consumer, as we go up our ladder, there's still a lot to choose from. We know a lot of different animals that eat not only insects, but can also eat insects and plants. So when we're thinking of our next insect eater, we're still going to start small because we have a longer food chain. Usually, animals that end a food chain are either larger in size, or at least have a bigger body size to take on bigger food. So when you're sitting here thinking what our second consumer could be, What could be something that's smaller, but also eat an insect? I have it right over here, so don't worry, I'll be back. Now, this animal that we're going to see next is another one that doesn't really live in our habitats, but does act as a great teacher for animals like it that do. And so she might have some different features or colors on her body. But this kind of animal, I'm back, is a prime predator to insects like mosquitoes, flies, beetles, and more. Ooh, I have a lot of folks thinking frog or amphibians. That actually would be a great second one too. Somebody thought a bat. Oh, that's an awesome choice. They're amazing at eating insects, especially here in Michigan. But let's see if you guys can think this would be a good second consumer. Ta-da! Now, I get it. Not everybody might have guessed this or thought this could be a great one, but I want to make sure we understand why we have her out here today. First things first, you can probably just see by her size and the amount of limbs that she has that she is a spider. Oh yeah, some folks in our chat room are saying tarantula. You're right. Tarantulas are the largest groups of spiders in terms of their size. This kind of tarantula, you can kind of see it. She's called a Mexican red knee tarantula due to the red point on her knee. And while I know not everybody is a fan of spiders, spiders are actually really helpful, even beneficial to us, especially if we like to grow food, if we like to have crops or gardens or outdoor plants. Why? Well, like I said in the beginning, these guys are prime predators to insects like mosquitoes or beetles or flies, things that actually eat our food. There are some people that put spiders in their kitchen to get rid of fruit flies or ants that like to eat our food that's on our kitchen counter. And these guys, they don't want that. They're primarily insect eaters. Don't get me wrong, spiders look a little strange when it comes to other kinds of animals, but that doesn't mean that they can't look this way for a variety of reasons. For example, having 8 legs means that you're a lot faster. But there's more to the tarantula than just her legs. She actually is very hairy. She's a very hairy spider. And what that means is she relies on those hairs. Somebody mentioned she's super fuzzy. Yes, Katie. She's using those hairs as a way to navigate around her environment. See, sure, spiders have 8 eyes, but she can't actually see me all that well. In fact, she can really only see light and dark spaces. That's it. So she relies on using her hairs almost like whiskers to feel what's around her and where she's walking. They also don't have a nose. They also don't have ears. So that's their primary sense. She also, sometimes if you watch her walk, I was trying to see if we can get her legs to move a little bit. If you watch how her legs move, every so often, she'll kind of pick them up and kind of pat them on my hand, almost very gently. Well, that's because she has taste buds on her toes. She's actually tasting my hand with her feet. And as silly as that seems, those sensors are incredibly important. She kind of is trying to figure out what this human hand tastes like. But she can attach webs or pieces of her web to her toes, and that helps her hunt for her food. See, this kind of spider is a burrowing spider or an underground trapdoor spider. And so when she builds a web, she actually puts it just along or on top of a log. And then she leaves part of her web attached to her toes. And what she's doing is she's trying to feel vibrations, movements on top of her web like an insect, to where she knows that's something she can eat. She'll go up. She actually eats it right away. She doesn't spin it around or keep it in her web for later. The really funky part, though, is how spiders eat. As a predator, as a meat eater, and the fact that they have to catch or hunt their food, they have a unique structure in their teeth we call fangs, 2 sharp teeth, but that's it. The other thing they have, all spiders have this, is venom. Even the one on my hand, she has venom right now in her teeth. But here's why. Spiders have to use venom in order to eat their food. If you only have 2 teeth and your mouth is super tiny, there's no way you can chew up your food into tiny bits, even to try to swallow it whole. So spiders will use venom, sticking it into their prey and kind of turn it into a smoothie. They make their food a liquid so they can drink it instead. It's kind of like if we had cheeseburger smoothies for lunch or something, which maybe doesn't sound that appetizing for us, but an insect smoothie probably sounds delicious for the spider. But without venom, they would starve. Spiders have to have venom in order to be able to eat. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to survive. Ooh, I do see a question in the chat room, and folks are welcome to place their questions in there. In between the animals, we'll make sure we save time for any of your questions or thoughts. I see one that says, does she eat birds or bats? Ooh, good question. This individual tarantula isn't big enough to take on those kinds of food or prey. Her biggest thing would be something like a cricket or a grasshopper or a small cockroach. But there are spiders called Goliath bird-eating spiders that are way bigger than this one, and yes, can hunt for things like birds. We'll eat them in a very similar fashion too. Great question. That's why though we focus a lot on smaller spiders that live here, because we rely on them primarily for the food that's near us, like insects. We know that our spiders are definitely not this large, and usually their size can depend on what kinds of food they can eat. Somebody asked how old she is. She is quite an old spider. That's a great question. Most female tarantulas, this one is a girl, tend to live longer than the males. We believe she's at least 8 years old though. Tarantulas, some species, can live to be over 10 years old, which is incredibly long for something like a spider. Most spiders here in Michigan don't actually live for more than a year. So it's amazing to find one or understand one that lives for as long as it does. And there's a lot of cool stuff. The spiders are actually pretty interesting once we start learning the facts and how they're able to survive. But we still have 3 other consumers we got to meet in our food chain. And now, as we're going up our ladder, we can now think of an animal that is a spider predator, predator to insects, and potentially could eat plants too. That's the thing about food chains. As you go up the ladder, most of the animals or consumers near the top can typically eat everything else or most of those items near the bottom. So if we were thinking of an animal that would eat insects, arachnids, and then potentially plants, we could think of, well, maybe some less variety of animals, ones that are larger maybe than even spiders and insects. While I grab our next consumer, I saw there was another question of, can this animal kill humans? That's a good question because we usually think of venom or being venomous as a really scary or dangerous term. What I will say though is this, that individual spider, no, she cannot kill a human. Her venom is not what we call potent enough. For me, for example, if she were to bite me, it'd be kind of like a mosquito bite. It'd be really itchy, and I'd get a big red bump on my hand, but that's about it. There are some spiders, yes, that are what we would call medically significant, which just means if you were to get bitten by them, it's important to go see the doctor. That's because of how their venom is designed. Sometimes their venom is so potent so they can eat larger food, and therefore it affects larger animals too. Since that tarantula just eats insects, her venom is really potent for tiny animals like insects, but nothing as big as us. Good question though, for sure. All right, I'll take this one then too. I love the questions about spiders. I could really talk about them all day. Do the baby spiders, are they taken care of by their mom, or are they there on their own when they hatch? Ooh, that is a cool question. Now, spiders, when they're born or hatch out of their eggs, they actually are on their own. They are able to do whatever they need to. The only exception is that there are a couple types of spiders that when the eggs hatch, the mothers actually pass away. They're no longer alive, and their body becomes food for their babies. But there are spiders called nursery spiders that carry their eggs with them. They actually carry all the eggs with them on their back or underneath their stomach with them as they travel so that they keep their eggs safe before they hatch. That is a really awesome question. Most animals that are not mammals or reptiles don't usually stick around or raise their young once they hatch out of an egg. But for many invertebrates, like insects and arachnids, the mothers or the parents, if you will, if they do keep the eggs with them, they'll actually have themselves and they'll sacrifice themselves as food for their babies. That way, when they hatch, they know they have food there right away. It's a really interesting lifestyle and a unique way to make sure the next generation can survive. Very cool too, with very specific kinds of spiders and insects. I love that. Okay, since our spider was pretty big, we have to make sure our food chain is appropriate. So you may notice, first of all, that I put on gloves, which may give you an idea on the kind of animal that we can eat. But I have to figure out something that can not only eat a spider, but something as large as a tarantula. So I have to get a little creative here. Let's see, instead of something smaller, like what we might find in Michigan, we can look around the world and look for something like this. He almost doesn't even fit in our video screen. Oh yeah, some people were saying amphibians. My friends, you so got it. And this guy is definitely an amphibian. But not just any amphibian. He's huge. This, my friends, is what we call a giant African bullfrog. and he is the second largest bullfrog in the entire world. There's only one other species bigger than him. And yeah, his body's pretty chunky, his belly is quite wide, but there's more to it than that. See, in some habitats, this guy specifically, his pond habitat, he's actually on top of the food chain. And it's mostly because of not only how big he is, but the size of the food he can eat. This guy, this kind of bullfrog, is not only known to eat things like large spiders, he can eat other amphibians, other frogs and toads. Or better yet, he's also known to hunt mice and small birds in the wild, which is crazy for huge amphibians. But here's why. This guy's able to eat larger, stronger food items because of what's inside his mouth. Unlike most amphibians, this guy has teeth, or teeth-like structures, two large structures on the bottom of his mouth that almost look like fangs. But they allow him to grab onto these larger, stronger items and then be able to swallow them whole. And I can try to move my fingers a little bit. You can actually see where the edges of his mouth are. His mouth itself is ginormous too. So being able just to be bigger, and also because he's very territorial, there's not a lot of other big animals like him that he'll allow near his habitat. This guy could even finish off some food chains we talk about. Oh, I saw a question really quick that actually is great to talk about. We had somebody that asked, what's the difference between frogs and toads? That's a great question because not much. There's not really a difference between the two. See, we scientists, we like to name things. We like to put things in groups and name them accordingly. But the thing is that frogs and toads, while they might look different, they're actually the same kind of animal. What we usually do is this. Toads, when they are adults, they typically go further away from the water. They're more on land, so they kind of look like land. They look like a rock or a chunk of soil. Their camouflage is different. That means they also eat different animals, like earthworms or slugs or small spiders. Whereas frogs, like the one in my hand, they tend to stay by the water or in the water habitat their whole lives, even when they're an adult. So that means the type of food that they're going to find is different, and just their overall camouflage is different. I don't say to look at the bumps though, because this is a really bumpy frog. Even though toads look like they have more bumps on their body, frogs can too. Great question. But what I really want you guys to focus on are his eyes. See, with his eyes, they're not only ginormous, but you'll notice they sit on the top of his face. Well, most often frogs and toads, when they're camouflaged, whether underground or underwater, they'll pop their eyes up and above the surface just to be able to see what's around them. But what if I told you this frog could use his eyes to swallow his food? See, these guys don't have the same muscles you humans do. Well, we could sit here right now and swallow a little bit of spit. Really easy. See, that's because we have a lot of complicated throat muscles that help us swallow our foods. He doesn't. So instead, he actually takes his eyes, and when he's swallowing something whole, he pushes his eyes down his throat and swallows his food with the pushing force of his eyes. Yeah, other amphibians do it. Salamanders and toads do too. So when you see an amphibian eat, watch, because their eyes will magically disappear and then boop, pop right back up. That's a lot of great reactions in our chat room. If you don't believe me, and if you have access to YouTube, I encourage folks to look up a frog eating and watch. Sometimes they even have it in slow motion, and you can see their eyes magically disappear. Come back up into the same section. It's a crazy, crazy adaptation. I did see somebody had a question on what the difference between frogs and bullfrogs. Frogs and bullfrogs are in the same category. They're all considered frogs in general. Usually we classify bullfrogs as just being larger kind or a larger type of frog. Same thing with spiders, how we talk about some being tarantulas. That's because they're in a group of just larger kinds of spiders. So that's the idea with bullfrogs too. Good question though, especially when we think of how we label animals in different animal groups. It is a really cool feature. So we'll let you guys take a look at this guy. He'd be our third consumer, kind of in the middle of the food chain that we are building. But this is where it gets tricky. Remember how I said this animal in his habitat could be on top of his food chain? And when we were looking at our chart, we actually had two empty spaces. Now, I left those two empty spaces blank in the beginning because sometimes when we look at food chains, we'll have multiple consumers. So what I'd have here, I'm going to bring up my chart again, is I'll actually put in the second box, I'll put consumer number 2. Today, like I said, we had 5. But when you get to the top of the food chain, there's actually a different term that we use. We don't say consumer, we say top predator. And what that means is that this animal has some kind of feature or some kind of adaptation, a way for it to not only make sure it doesn't have anything eating it above the food chain, but that it can basically take on or hunt everything underneath it. Now that bullfrog, because of its size, it in a way in a pond habitat is a top predator. There aren't a lot of animals in its habitat that can just eat a frog that big. But I say our next part's tricky because the next two consumers we're going to meet in their habitat, they too are top predators. So what we have to determine is why in the food chain we are building is one a top predator and one not. Well, there's a couple features we can look at, and I will tell you this. Size doesn't always mean that they're going to be on top of a food chain. Sometimes larger animals can still get outsmarted by other smaller creatures. Somebody had a great example in the chat room. They were saying lions were a great example. Yeah, usually a lot of large cats we think of as being top predators, larger birds, sometimes really fast animals, ones though that might have different adaptations that help them hunt too. They're almost always active hunters as well. Polar bears, cheetahs, there's a lot of good examples in our chat room. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and meet our next consumer. Let's figure out now how only it's a top predator in its own habitat, but why it might not be on top of our food chain. Maybe there's something that's missing, or there are other animals we find. And don't worry, we do have a top predator in today's food chain. She will amaze you, not only by her size, but the adaptations she uses to survive. Wolves are another great one. Bears in general too are another good one. You can think of a lot of animals that are strictly carnivores for that too, but some might eat plants as well. All right, let's take a look at our potential top predator. She's a little larger than some of our other animals, so I do want to step back a little bit so folks can see her. And she's not even the biggest kind of animal in her animal group that we could share. What I will tell you this is that she's a snake. She's doing a great job representing her namesake too. This kind of snake that I have in my hand is what we call a ball python, or sometimes a royal python they're named as. And it's kind of because they can put themselves in this really unique pretzel formation, or where they look like they're in a ball. And yeah, snakes are great to have in food chains. Not only because they don't seem to be really picky about their diet, this snake can pretty much eat everything else that we've met today, but because we find them in a lot of different habitats and in a lot of shapes and sizes. I'll tell you this, here in Michigan, we don't have snakes this big. We have snakes that are pretty long, but they're quite thin, and they don't usually are able to eat everything else in their food chain. This guy though, she's totally a top predator just because she's big, she's chunky, she's hefty, no offense. But that's actually because she has a lot of muscle power. This kind of snake is what we call a boa constrictor. And boas and pythons have their chock full of muscles that they use to hold on or squeeze their prey in order to asphyxiate or suffocate it. This is kind of a lazy predator. This snake doesn't actively go searching for its food. It actually waits for food to come just close enough to it, and then it'll grab it right there and swallow it whole right on the spot. Oh, we have a couple other folks that knew about constrictors too. I think snakes are some of my favorite creatures, so I could talk about these guys a lot as well. But speaking of food chains, we got to figure out then how this animal actually eats its prey. Because snakes, they don't chew up their food. They actually don't have a lot of teeth, just like most of the animals we've met today. But they have a unique way of swallowing their food whole. Now, some snakes that are also top predators, like a Burmese python, they can get to be over 20 feet long, and they can eat small crocodiles. That's how big of a food they can eat. But check it out. When I look at this snake compared to the rest of her body, her face is super tiny. Look how small it is. Here, I can even use my hand as an example. We put her on my hand. Look, it's not even as big as my hand. But she can totally eat something this big. She can even eat that bullfrog you just met. So you gotta wonder how in the world she could fit something like that in her mouth, or how some snakes could fit crocodiles in their mouth. Well, it all has to do with their jaw. Some of you may have seen this before too, but if you actually hold on to your chin and you try to open your mouth as wide as you can, you'll notice that suddenly our chin says, stop. Oh, no more. See, that's because our lower jaw bones are connected via our chin here. Well, snakes don't have a chin. Snakes don't have this bone that connects their jaws together. So what they can do is they actually can stretch their jaw out. There's a line that runs down their throat, and they open up their jaw, stretch it out and around their food, and using all of the muscles here on the side of their face, they slowly work their food into their mouth and down their throat, to where most snakes can eat something at least 3 times the size of their face. Sometimes when they're doing it, it even looks like they're chewing, just kind of how they move their mouths. Now for a snake though, it takes a while for them to actually eat their food. This animal, we mostly feed her rodents, large rodents like rats, and it can take her 2 to 3 days to fully eat and digest her food. That python that can eat crocodiles, it sometimes takes them up to a week to eat their food. So snakes don't hunt that often, or at least they don't eat every day. There are some snakes that can even go a whole year without eating just because they're pleasantly full and don't use up a lot of energy. The final thing I want to talk about her, though, is why she's called a royal python. See, sometimes we'll use that ball python term. Where in her native habitat, where she lives, she's considered to be royalty because of what she eats. See, if we are farmers, or if we're in the agricultural industry, and we are producing a lot of crops, and we have a lot of rodents around our space, they're going to eat half of our food. So we might not have enough food for ourselves, or our village, or any part of where we live. But if you have a snake around, these snakes aren't going to eat your crops, but they'll for sure want to eat those rodents. And so farmers honor the snake, not just because of her size and because of where she lives, but because she takes care of the rodent problem, so they don't have to use chemicals or harsher ingredients that could sometimes hurt their crops or other creatures too. So in many ways, she's considered royalty because of that. And a lot of snakes here too. A lot of snakes that we find in our habitat are really beneficial for us as well, because they'll do the same thing where they take care of those rodents that can sometimes eat our food. So a really cool, interesting interaction of predator and prey. But we still have one other consumer to get to. Well, sure, in a South African habitat, this ball python makes an excellent top predator. We have our top predator next for us to visit. And when I say our, this is what we would consider a top predator here in Michigan and in Canada. The really cool part is that she might not be the biggest animal in this group, but she has specifically 2 features that we're going to look at that not only help her hunt, but are main adaptations for her to catch and eat her food. She's in a slightly bigger box over here, so I'm going to make sure I grab her. You're also still welcome to ask those questions. I know we'll be out of time soon, but we also can ask questions or think of just how these food chains are connected. While we've been meeting a variety of animals found across the world, you can probably even build your own food chain just based on the creatures you find around your habitat. Or better yet, using the sheets that Molly said that she provided on our website too. All right, we'll let this lady get comfortable. This is a little bit of a bigger creature, so I need to make sure she's stable. Okay, ready? Let's see if we can meet our top predator. In fact, she's so big, she's sometimes hard to fit in the screen. Oh, I love how somebody was guessing an owl or a falcon. You know, birds of prey are actually a pretty common animal we see up top on the food chains, eagles too. And birds of prey or raptors, like hawks, owls, falcons, eagles, or this red-tailed hawk that's sitting on my glove, the 2 key things, the key features we look at that help them survive are what's on their feet and what's on their face. And so from there, what I want to focus on first, I'm going to have her adjust herself here, is what's on her feet. See, birds of prey, they call talons. You can also call them toenails though. I guess this would be what our toenails look like if we never clipped them. But these 4 large curved toenails called talons are her primary hunting device. Raptors, that word raptor means to grab or to seize something. And so she relies on those talons to really hold on to her larger, stronger food. But there's more. These guys are also known for their grip strength, their powerful grip. In fact, if you looked at her feet right now, her feet are so powerful, her grip is so strong, she could break all the bones in my hand if she tried. But that's because their grip strength is designed to break the bones of their prey. And so not only do they have these large feet and large toenails, they have an incredibly powerful grip to really grasp on to larger food items. Now beyond that, you might also see as she's moving around that she has this really large curved beak. Well, her beak and talons kind of act like a knife and fork combo. Birds don't have any teeth, So they have to rely on whatever the shape of their beak is in order to eat their selective diet. So she can use her sharp beak to not only hold on to her food as well, but to also cut it up into smaller bits if she's unable to swallow it whole. This allows this hawk to eat pretty much everything you've seen so far in our food chain, but other smaller mammals like squirrels, rabbits, raccoons, and more. Because she has such a wide diet, and because we find this hawk in so many different habitats, we usually see birds of prey on the top here of our food chain. I did see somebody had a question about our snake. The kind of snake that's known to eat things like crocodiles is what we call a Burmese python, or sometimes people call it a reticulated python. So hopefully that helps answer your question. Now, this, like we mentioned, is a red-tailed hawk. I can sort of show you her tail feathers there, this large fanned-out appearance, and they're really common by our human habitats. But that's actually because we do things that help this animal to find food. All the things that we have seen today and many of the things that are on her menu usually eat stuff that we create, like trash or things in our garden. Or sometimes we like to put bird food out for small songbirds on a bird feeder. Well, what we kind of do then is make a little raptor cafeteria, a space where it's very easy for her to find the food that she needs in order to survive. And she doesn't really have to go anywhere to go looking for it. We even see them by our highways, along our lawns. Somebody said they even saw them yesterday. I've seen 2 already today. It's a beautiful sunny day for them to hunt. And so yeah, we can find them all over the place too. And because they're so common, that's also why we see them in a lot of food chains. Now, if you really wanted to be complicated and turn this into a food web, there is one animal we met today that would technically be on top, and that would be our cockroach. Do you guys remember that we said they eat dead stuff? Well, everything in our food chain does eventually have to pass away. But what will happen then is the animals that eat the dead organic matter or decaying matter, they get to come next. And so even though our cockroach was really low on our food chain, he can also be near the top, because even when this hawk passes away, something has to happen to her. This organic material has to go away. So these animals that are decomposers or scavengers, that's where they come into play. That's kind of the next step though, once we learn or understand better about food chains. From there though, because I know we're almost out of time, I'm going to pause myself for a second, and I want to make sure I touch base with Katie and Molly to make sure there aren't any other questions or thoughts for today's program.
I think we could, because I looked at the questions and you've talked about them all, but I'm really glad to see we met some new animals today.
Yes, we did. We had some new ones featured today, for sure.
That was awesome. So for our students who have visited this program before, they got to see a new bird, and yeah, that was great.
Yeah, she's great. Don't get me wrong, owls are great top predators too, but we talk about owls a lot, and we can't miss these guys, especially since they're so common.
Absolutely. Students, do you have any other questions?
Thank you. She is very beautiful. It's true.
Yeah, she is beautiful.
And remember too, any of the questions you have, especially if it's about food chains, one of the best ways to understand them is just by practicing. It's really cool that you guys have access to those cards, because even with those cards alone, you could build at least 10 food chains just with those.
Wow. That's cool. Well, we'd love to see them, because yeah, if you do happen to build a food chain and you can take a picture of it and send it to us, we could send it and share it to Landis. That would be, and I know she'd love that. So thanks everyone for coming, and thanks Landis for sharing the amazing animals and see how all of nature is interconnected and the impact. So we'll see you guys later. We have dance and storyboarding with art coming up today, and so we'll see you soon. Have a great
thanks again guys for having us.
Thanks Landis.
Bye everyone.